On today's show, Oklahoma City, NBA champions. They win Game 7 over the Indiana Pacers. We're here to talk about it all on today's edition of Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs. He is Swipa from Locked On Nuggets. And thank you for making this show your first listen today and every day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Of course, we're a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button as we get started here. But today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Game 7 of the NBA Finals on Sunday night. The Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Indiana Pacers 103-91 to win their first championship since moving to Oklahoma City 17 years ago. There's so much to get to from this game. Of course, we will talk about Tyrese Haliburton's injury that I think severely affected this game. But ultimately, Swipe, I think the Thunder are a very, very worthy NBA champion.
Yeah, first and foremost, want to give credit to OKC for winning this title. They were my going into the season pick. Then they were my playoff pick in terms of if I was a neutral observer who I would choose. 68-win team, best point differential ever. One of maybe the best defense of all time. The MVP winner, 32 points a game, 5-5. Him, Michael Jordan, Kobe. That's the kind of class he was in terms of his two-way guard season that he had in the regular season. And then you go into the playoffs, you steamroll a Memphis team, Game 7 with the Denver Nuggets. You go 5 games with the Wolves, and then you win in Game 7 versus the Indiana Pacers. Thunder fans, they have been waiting on this, not for a long time, but let's say like the last 15 years since kind of those peak early start years for Durant, Harden, and for Russ. And they get 4 MVP level players over the last 15 years that have gone through their franchise, and even all that talent, they weren't able to get it done. Ran into the Miami Heat, ran into the San Antonio Spurs, ran into the Golden State Warriors, and then the team gets kind of ripped apart, and then they rebuild after making what many people thought was one of the best trades possible for the Clippers, getting Paul George and assets, and they gave up 5 first-round picks and SGA in that deal. And then SGA, the stuff of legends, gets to the team, goes into the bubble, learning how to be a role player with CP3, learning how to step into being a starter, learning how to step into being an all-star. And then over the last 3 seasons, SGA has risen from being a good name, good player, who looked like he had a lot of potential, to being a 3-time straight first-team All-NBA player, finishing second in MVP last year, finishing first in MVP this year, and then leading his team to 68 wins and going, honestly, despite all the lows that OKC had in this playoff, I think they showed that they were the best team in basketball for the most part, and they ended up getting into the NBA Finals. They lost 4 games in the Western Conference. They lose 3 games here. They go 16-7. And they end up winning the NBA championship. And SGA wins Finals MVP and shares the award with J-Dub, which I thought was the coolest moment, and says that he deserves the Finals MVP just as much as I do. So the team deserves a lot of credit. I want to give them credit. Always recognize the historic season they played. Alex Caruso, one of the most important role players in the league, now a 2-time NBA champion. They trade for Caruso. They sign Isaiah Hartenstein, and all she wrote. You get 2 role players in the offseason that end up being the swing difference between really losing in the second round, I would argue, to now winning the NBA Finals. Great, well-deserved job by Sam Presti. Great, well-deserved job by Mark Daigneault. OKC, you are champions. You can always remember this moment that your franchise overcame all odds and became one of the select franchises to earn an NBA title. A lot of Seattle Supersonics fans, while they might feel just a little bit of angst, the fact that this didn't happen in Seattle, there is some connection, obviously, to the OKC Thunder. So you get to experience this championship as well. This is a big moment for OKC fans, big moment for Seattle Supersonics fans. This is a big moment for people that have kind of been watching the league for some time now. Also, a big moment for Canada. You get your first ever finals MVP, and then you get a chance to see him have, we'll talk about his game overall and stuff today, but just a big moment all the way around. I mean, the international community, the basketball community, everyone is celebrating the OKC Thunder.
I do think it's a really good thing too, and a really cool thing that the Thunder were, I don't know if they were wire to wire the best team in basketball, just because the Cavs had that 15-0 start that feels like forever ago, but from Thanksgiving on, they were the best team in basketball. And I think that's a really cool thing to be rewarded. And we will talk about Indiana, and we have talked about how good the Pacers had been since January 1st through the end of the season too. But the Thunder were the best, most consistent team in the NBA. And I think that being rewarded, that team being the one that comes out on top, is a good thing for the league. And I think it's a cool thing to see that sort of greatness come to the top and rise to the top, if you will. Like, that is something that I think is awesome, because I want teams to strive to be like that in this era where I think the regular season has unfortunately been a little bit devalued at time. The fact that the Thunder won 68 games and tried hard and wanted to be a great team night in and night out, and ultimately I do think we're rewarded for that with the way that they were able to kind of dig deeper in the postseason than some of the other teams they played. I think that is a really awesome thing, and I'm glad that OKC won for that reason. And I think Indiana too deserves a lot of credit for just getting to this point. You were somebody, Swipa, who was much higher on the Pacers than I think the consensus was heading into the playoffs. You're one of the few people that certainly I talked to that thought they were capable of beating the Cavs. I think a lot more people thought they were capable of beating the Knicks once they got to the conference finals. But even then, I didn't think that they were going to take this to a game 7 in this series. I thought the Thunder would win in 5. And I, for whatever reason, still underrated the Pacers. And who knows? If Tyrese Haliburton doesn't have that devastating injury, we could be having a very different conversation right now. So I just want to be sure to give them a lot of credit, because they really deserve it. I think they've opened up a lot of eyes, and it's very unfortunate for them. Not necessarily that they lost, because I do think ultimately they lost to a better team, but the way that they lost, I think, really is something that should sting.
Well, and I want to be very clear here, Indiana Pacers fans. We were all robbed collectively, and most importantly here, Indiana Pacers players, staff, coaches, and fans. And I don't want to say rob as in somebody did something. Tyrese Haliburton attempted to play through a calf injury, and I think this is a larger conversation for the second segment. Tyrese Haliburton, with the money on the line, the chips on the line, in Game 6 showed up, played a very, very determined game. And then in Game 7, with the chance to win on the road, I don't want to downplay what was happening. The Indiana Pacers looked like they were in control of the basketball game. It was a close game, but Tyrese Haliburton had made 3 threes. They were rolling. They looked confident. They looked spry. OKC had to call a timeout. They looked as if they were ready for the moment, and they were ready for the opportunity that was in front of them. When Tyrese Haliburton went down, he very clearly said, "It happened. He knew it was his Achilles and everyone else." When they played the video, which obviously did not need to be played as many times as it did, you clearly saw what happened. And you know what? My first instinct obviously was, praying for Tyrese that he gets healthy as soon as possible for his own sake. The robbery that we're going to miss out on what could have been a classic Game 7 because it was heading in that direction. And I think, again, if Hallie's there at the end of the game, I think the end of the game goes differently because they needed a ball handler, needed their playmaker, they needed their tone setter, didn't have any of that. And then they ran a lineup in the third quarter with no Nembhard and no Pascal, and you could see the playmaking, the offense was not there. And I think that Hallie going down with an Achilles injury, after Jason Tatum went down with an Achilles injury, after Damian Lillard went down with an Achilles injury. And honestly, we were, not to say Donovan Mitchell would have tore his Achilles, he looked clearly he was bothered. It clearly looked like something was wrong, and thank God he did not. But we saw Aaron Gordon in the playoffs deal with not just the calf, but the hamstring injury that hampered him in Game 7. Michael Porter Jr. with the separated shoulder. I think my biggest point with all this, for everybody listening, is that we should be much more appreciative of the fact, Danny, that NBA players put their bodies on the line for their teammate every single game. And in moments like this, NBA players care so much about winning and about being there for their team and giving their all and giving their best that they're willing to put themselves in dangerous and really extremely risky situations to show up for their team. And I think Tyrese Haliburton showed so much heart this playoffs, and he showed so much heart fighting through injuries in the NBA Finals. And it is horrible to see that it doesn't work out like he wanted it to, and the worst possible thing happened. But I truly hope that he heals up because, again, the Eastern Conference is not going to be the same without him. The East is going to be very different next year. We don't know what's going to happen with the East as a whole, but Tyrese Haliburton, you were the catalyst for why this Indiana Pacers team ends up in the NBA Finals, and we will always remember the run that you had and that the Pacers had over these 4 rounds. It was just truly, truly remarkable basketball.
It was. It's one I don't think anybody's going to forget, and I think this is a run too that you look at, and we can certainly touch on this a little bit more later. But this is a run that I think is going to give a lot of teams hope because nobody was picking the Pacers to be in this spot before the season. Nobody was picking the Pacers to be in this spot at the All-Star break. Nobody was picking the Pacers to be in this spot when the postseason started. Nobody was picking the Pacers to be in this spot after they won their first round series against the Milwaukee Bucks. Like nobody picked the Pacers at any point. I think the only time I think people actually picked the Pacers to win a series after the first round was against the New York Knicks. I think other than that, it was consensus. The Cavs are going to be the Pacers. I think it was certainly consensus. And listen, the Thunder did win the series, but I think it was consensus that the Thunder would win this series too. So the Pacers get a lot of credit, but there's a lot of basketball to talk about. We have to talk about SGA going off for 29 points and 12 assists in this game, winning finals MVP. We have to talk about everything that actually did happen other than the Tyrese Haliburton injury on Sunday night. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's show is brought to you by Olipop. I am somebody that I drink soda. It's been a guilty pleasure of mine since I was a kid. I love the taste. I do. I just think it's awesome. But I know that it's not necessarily awesome for me. As good as it might taste, it's not the best thing for me to put in my body. Well, I found something that's the best of both worlds, and this is it right here. It's Olipop. And I'm holding up the crisp apple can partially because I ran out of the vintage cola can, because that is kind of my go-to. That's the thing I really like. It tastes exactly the way I want it to, but it's also giving me the health benefits that I'm not getting from drinking regular pop. I'm not getting anything that's supporting my digestive health when I'm drinking something that's not Olipop. So what I've started doing is just drinking this instead because I'm getting the great taste that I want. I'm also getting the health benefits that I need. It's not loaded with sugar the way that other traditional sodas are. Instead, it's something that's going to help you feel better while also drinking something that you love to drink. So get your free can today of Olipop. Just buy any 2 cans in store and they'll reimburse you for one of them. Head to drinkolipop.com. That is drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA to claim your free can and find Olipop near you. Again, drinkolipop.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you for making today's episode your first listen. Thank you for making the show your first listen every single day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Of course, the Thunder, NBA champions, 103-91 win over the Pacers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the way for OKC, 29 points, 12 assists, 5 rebounds, was 8 of 27, and then, of course, was voted finals MVP. If you had a vote and all 11 people that voted for finals MVP did tally it for SGA, is that the direction you would have gone?
Would I have given SGA the finals MVP?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Duh. I don't think there's anybody pushing him from OKC. I did say on another platform that if J-Dub had maintained what he did after game 5 and game 6 would have had another, 30-point game where he was excellent. And then they would have had another game today where he was just absolutely excellent. What would have swung it? And one of the things that is the untold story of OKC and Indiana in game 7 is Indiana played defense the whole game. Like they really did. SGA was really, really good in the first half, but Danny, SGA in the second half, I think he had 13 points and he was 3 of 15 from the field, if I remember correctly. So they balled. I mean, they literally like played upstanding defense to try to hold down one of the best scorers in the league to really playing below his means. I mean, he had 5 assists and he had 13 points on 3 of 15 shooting in the second half. I mean, they did more than enough defensively. I think the issue was they just didn't have the offense to counter. But I think SGA all the way around, he was the best Thunder in the series. He showed up in a lot of big moments. I think he had some really lows, like this half, obviously. I think game 4 up until the end of the game. And obviously game 6 wasn't good for anybody. I think he had some moments where he didn't look great, but I think he showed up and did what an MVP does. And the playmaking in the first half was excellent. And the first 3 quarters was excellent. And all that stuff matters. I think the crowning finals MVP. And there's just nobody else I think that would have had a real argument to win that award for OKC. You know, I think everybody played well, but he was obviously the best player in the roster.
Right. I think that's correct. I know that's correct, but I do think that it's worth giving Jalen Williams a little bit more credit, just because I think that in games 3, 4, and 5, he was outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the Thunder didn't win game 3. They won games 4 and 5. He had 27 in game 4. He went off for 40 points in game 5. Like, to me, that is the team that wins game 5. Like, I know what the percentages say about how frequently that team goes off to win the series, but that was the moment where I'm like, okay, this guy is not just a nice player. Like, he is a champion. He is a star caliber player. And for him to step up in that spot, and I know that SGA was still the MVP and he should have been the MVP, but I just think him stepping up in that spot, like, they do not win this series without Jalen Williams doing that in game 5. And I do think that he had some really nice moments in game 7. I don't know that they necessarily needed them, but I thought he had some nice moments in the second half, more so than the first half. I didn't think he was great in the first half, but I thought he was better in the second half. So I do think that it's worth giving him a little bit of credit there, even if it's not all the way as to him getting the MVP trophy. And like you said, I did think one of the cool moments after the fact was SGA handing him the finals MVP trophy for him to experience too.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, this is a really big moment for OKC, and I love the fact that their big 3 is together. The big 3 is young. The big 3, they look like they're going to be ready to rock and roll for the next several years with Chet Holmgren, J-Dub, and with SGA. They have Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, Isaiah Hartenstein, Dort, Wiggins. Everybody's on the books. They're ready to roll. They're ready to rock. So this could be the first of a couple of championships. Obviously, as we have seen, Danny, health is never guaranteed. The Denver Nuggets win a title in 23. Jamal Murray has a calf injury in the first round. Is not the same player going for the rest of the playoffs. They lose Bruce Brown. Then next year they lose KCP, and they lose in the second round 2 years in a row. Then you get the Boston Celtics to win the title in dominant fashion versus, you know, Eastern Conference that was just not up to par. And then obviously the Mavericks in the finals. And then Jason Tatum goes down with an Achilles injury when they're on the way to being down 3-1 to the Knicks. So you just never know. This year, they went saying the Thunder. I think one of the things I do want to push back to is people saying that the Thunder outright, you know, who's beating them next year. I'm just like, well, they went to 2 game 7s in this run,
Right?
And I would say they could have lost today if their best player on the other team was healthy, you know. And I think they could have lost to Denver if they didn't have 3 or 6 players that were injured. I think the playoffs is so reliant on health, and OKC, they've been late season. I'm talking about late season health. Very lucky. Last 2 years. They just lost last year because I think youth and, you know, PJ Washington and all that. And this year, I think they win for other reasons. And I'm saying that, like, next year, you just don't know 1 year from now what every team is going to look like. I mean, the Houston Rockets, obviously, you know, we haven't talked about this. They get Kevin Durant, and they're going to have depth plus Kevin Durant. That's a big deal. You know, how much noise are the Rockets able to make? Are some of the tools the teams in the Western Conference able to retool around their stars as well? But I think OKC should be in contention to win the title next year. I think they're the favorite for a reason. But, man, like, again, SGA capped off an incredible year. MVP, Finals MVP, Conference Finals MVP, scoring champion. I mean, that's a heavy set of awards and numbers and accomplishments in one season. So just an incredible year.
I'm glad you brought up the health aspect of this too, because I don't know that we necessarily talk about how much it matters. Like, I think that we want to put it at a point where injuries can't be an excuse, and they shouldn't be an excuse, but I also think that we kind of lose context because they do matter. But if you look at the 4 teams that were in the conference finals, what did they all have in common? They faced a team in the second round that was dealing with significant injury stuff, where you had The Minnesota Timberwolves beat the Warriors, who didn't have Steph Curry. The Pacers beat the Cavs, who were down Darius Garland and Evan Mobley for part of that series. The Thunder, they were able to get by a Denver Nuggets team that Aaron Gordon was not Aaron Gordon. The Knicks against the Boston Celtics, as you mentioned. Like, health matters so much. And the Thunder, to their credit, like, it's not necessarily all luck, but they were the team that was able to stay healthy. And I think that matters a lot. And that is something that, as you look at them maybe being able to repeat next year, I wonder, okay, how much of this now just becomes playing with variables? Like, how much of this is almost flipping a coin to some extent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we'll find out. We'll see. You know, like I said, you just don't know how things are going to roll. But I do know this right now. OKC was the best team this year, and they started the best team as well to start the season off. So, again, who knows? We could be looking back here next year and be like, we started something special.
We could. What do they need to do to repeat? I want to answer that next right here on Locked On Cavs, or Locked On NBA Game Night. Goodness. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track of all that cash. That's where Monarch Money comes in, because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money, not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. You can stop just managing your money. You can start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, even plan for some of those long-term goals that I know you have. And managing money with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. So we mentioned health as being a big thing, but as you look ahead, because that is what we love to do. We love to say, you know, this team is a dynasty in the making. And I think the Thunder are probably better equipped because of their age, because of where they're at financially, than several of the champions that have won in the past years. But this is now 7 different years with 7 different champions. And I think that is a good thing for the league. But to buck that trend and to be the first team since the Golden State Warriors in 2017 and 2018 to repeat, what needs to happen?
Luck. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Like, I don't think the NBA, where we are now, I think there's a lot of people, Danny, they're presupposing that the narrative, like, oh, the Thunder are so much better. Like, look at the regular season stuff. And Danny, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're so much better than everybody. The Boston, so much. Look at the net rating. The 3 teams, none of that matters. And I don't mean it doesn't matter as in, like, don't count it. Going into the playoffs, the Celtics got washed. Cleveland got washed. Like, OKC had 2 Game 7s despite being one of the best teams of all time. The NBA is about health and matchups and versatility. Are you healthy? Can you match up with damn near everybody? And are you versatile? And I think OKC did that, but really by the hair of their chinny chin. Like, again, if Hallie's healthy, that game is way different. And they could have lost. And we'd be sitting right here talking about the Pacers did something we've never seen before. 2 64-win teams they beat. And I think next year they got to have the health on their side, and they got to develop. They got to hope the Western Conference doesn't get better. Again, if you have marginal adds to Luka, LeBron, like, and I'm talking about marginal, like a center depth pieces, that's a scary team. If the Houston Rockets, if they add a two guard to this roster, that's a scary team. If the Nuggets, if they add bench players to that team, that's a scary team. And all of a sudden, there's 3 teams you could say could beat OKC in a matchup. And I think this is what the league is, though. You have to have things working to your advantage when May comes, Danny, when June comes. So for me, it's a matter of, when you get to the playoff next year, will you have more answers than you did this year? Will you have better offense than you did this year? Will you have shooters in your core and on your team more than you did this year? What's Chet Holmgren going to be next year? I think he was majorly disappointing a lot of this playoff run. I just don't think he's ready for that offensively. J-Dub. Even SGA in round 1 wasn't great. SGA started off round 2, not great. Finished round 2 really well. I think he had a really good series versus Minnesota, and then he was like this versus the Pacers. Like, if you hit one of these dips when you play one of these teams that's rising and they got the premium top end talent, you lose. So what I'm saying is, Danny, you have to have it all. And we don't know. This offseason, Danny, we already got a Kevin Durant trade. What if Giannis gets traded? Or
change everything.
What if some of these role players that are on these bad teams, they get traded? What if Cam Johnson gets traded to somebody in the Western Conference? Now we're like, you're adding pieces to your rotation and to your roster. So for me, you have to be healthy. OKC has to add to their roster. They got to get more shooting, but they got to hope. They got to hope that they're able to continue to get better, and that other teams in the West, they don't get the things they need to win. Danny, again, this is the 7th. So you got Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Nuggets, Celtics, Thunder. Am I missing one?
Warriors.
So 7 different champions in a row.
Yep.
Like, the NBA's betting is going to be an 8 team next year.
Yes, we have not had, and I think a lot of this has to do with, I just think that there's more talent in the NBA. Like, there's just more good teams. Even the bad teams have more good players than I think they have 10 to 15 years ago. So I look at that and say that's part of the reason why, is that the talent is, I don't know if it's spread out more or if there's just more of it than there was a decade ago. And at that time, it was just a little bit different because you had LeBron and the Cavs against Steph and Clay and Draymond, and then Kevin Durant entered the fray in the Warriors at that time for 4 straight years. But I think that this is a great thing for the NBA, that there is so much variety at the top. I think it's great that there are different playing styles. And I would bet that somebody other than the Thunder is going to win it next year. Like, the Thunder are, I believe, on FanDuel plus 230 to win the title next year, which obviously is the favorites. Those are not very long odds, but that still tells you that it's not the best chance in the world. Like, if you had to pick the Thunder or the field, you probably would pick the field. And then I want to get out of here with one last thing on the Thunder and their postseason run. But as you look back, maybe 6 months from now, or however long until the season starts next year, what are you going to look at as the defining moment for you of this postseason run for OKC?
Probably being down 2-1 in Denver, when Denver was up, I want to say 8 going into the 4th, maybe 6. Now, granted, like, the Nuggets couldn't hit a shot out of the boat. Like, could not hit water. They could have been down 3-1, and this whole thing is not happening. You know what I mean? But they
Right.
responded. They rallied. So I think probably that was a series. A lot of Thunder fans say that the team grew up because they really faced adversity in a very real way in that series. So that would probably be the moment that was like the turning point for the season. But Danny, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I thought they were gonna wax the Wolves. They did, and they waxed the Wolves. But I think the Pacers series, I picked it in 5. I think you picked it in 5. None of us expected the series to last this long. So, I mean, they get credit for doing it, but also too, like, there were minus 900 to win the series too. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, some of this is I think that the Patriots were just closer to them than I think we all gave them credit for. And like I said, if Hallie's there, like, it could all have been different. I feel split about this, because the moment for me that had to be the grow up moment was the second round, but it's also like it's not that they didn't grow up in the finals. I just think that, like, it was literally this close. It was an Achilles away from, we might not be having this conversation about OKC because they lose in a series that everyone thought they were going to walk through.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it didn't happen.
And I don't think that people felt they were going. I think a lot of people felt they were going to beat Denver. Like, I certainly picked them to beat the Nuggets in that series, but it wasn't. I was more confident they were going to beat the Pacers in this series than I was the Nuggets in that series, if that makes sense. Like, I picked them in both, and I would have picked them to beat any team in the playoffs this year because they were the best team for the vast majority of this season. But I kind of look at that as the growing up moment, the one that you mentioned where they were down 69-63 heading into the 4th quarter in Denver, down 2-1 in a series. Obviously, if they don't win that game, They don't win that series. They're not going to beat Denver and Nikola Jokic 3 straight times to come back from down 3-1. So we're not speaking about them as champions. I do think that they deserve a lot of credit for what they did in game 4, going into Indy down 2-1 on the road in the finals, just because that is a bigger stage than the second round, no matter where you're at, whether you're in Denver, Indy, just like the finals is all, the lights are always going to be brighter there. But I don't think that either one of those answers is necessarily the wrong one, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, all in all, congratulations to OKC. Pacers, you deserve a lot of credit for getting to this point, making it to a game 7. Wish we could have got to see a Hali game, but look, this could be the start of something special for OKC.
It certainly could be, and thank you for making this the start of something special for your day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating as we get out of here. Leave us a nice review, and if you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit the thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We will have so much more coverage from Game 7 of the NBA Finals right here on this very channel tomorrow all week. And then, of course, the NBA draft coming your way Wednesday and Thursday. Swipa and I will be back next Sunday to talk about, I don't know what, but something to do with the NBA right here on Locked On NBA Game Night.
Giannis is traded for Ace Bailey.